We are going to start now our Friday group meeting. It's 149th Friday group meeting. Last time video is 100th videos uploaded in our channel. Today's speaker is our NS Nappinai, one of the topmost expert in the cyber law and all. So invited immediately. The topic name is Cyber Frauds and Cybercrimes, from Metaverse, Cryptocurencies and Financial Frauds to Social Engineering Frauds. Be a Cyber Saathi, Prevent and Prosecute. Thank you, madam. So you are all the way. We are finishing at 3:45 because of Nageshwara's farewell function. Maximum 3:45 we are completing. Please, you can initiate, madam. Now, before that, we'll go by one introduction. Myself, G.Seshagiri.
Myself, Vidit Agarwal.
I am Kumar Dubey.
Rahul Sharma.
Quickly.
Ajit Kulsresht.
Andy Ari. Swarupa Reddy. Supra Saha.
Please, your name also. Please. So,
Pradip Kumar Shah.
Ramesh Mishra. Rahul Agarwal. Madhusudan.
Backside.
Why is it Abhilasha?
Good.
Venkanna.
Justice Karpakam Vinayakam sir, recorded, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir needs no introduction.
Your presence is enlightened all of us.
It's an honor to have you here, sir.
Please. Okay? Please, now you can.
Mr. Seshagiri Rao, sir. As always, it's an honor to address the Friday group, and thank you so much for having me over. As you had suggested we will do this session after my book launch, but it's a wonderful way to close the season, because this is the last day of court, and it's a wonderful way to close the season by addressing Friday group. So thank you for the prequel to the book now, which is what this has been. So today's topics are all about emerging technologies and about the kind of crimes and frauds that are being committed using technology, and what is the role of law as it is existing and what it ought to be in terms of combating crimes arising through use of emerging technologies. I thought I'll start with everybody's favorite topic of the day. We are all gathered here. It's so lovely of all of you all to be here on the last day and post-court, so thank you all for being here. We are all gathered here in person. We can see each other, not like those flat 2D cartoons, right? You remember the days, many of us here, quite a few millennials naturally here, but many of us who come from the previous generation will recollect the days when we started with just sketches and simple animation. Even when you look at Walt Disney's old cartoons, you'll see how they have evolved from that simple Mickey Mouse to what they are today, right? So Metaverse is something like that in a way. I'm just trying to simplify it. And in fact, since I mentioned Walt Disney, let me also rely on Walt Disney's quote to say, I'm here to entertain and hope that you'll all be educated. Right? So with that, what exactly is the Metaverse? It's immersive technology. So you had virtual reality where you could wear goggles and see what is around you in a different way. You can assume you're in a forest when you're sitting in SEBA library also, right? So you are watching something different. Then augmented reality made you feel what you were watching as if you were there in the forest. It included your sight, smell, sound, etc. But imagine if you're actually there physically, but not necessarily physically, but digitally present in 3D form in exactly the way you look here. Or you decide, no, this is very boring. Let me just choose an avatar which is very different. We have this, there was this movie called Golden Compass, which talked about animal demons, which is like your animal self. Your own core self is kind of translated into an animal. Imagine that you want to make a digital animal demon for yourself. and that's how you want to portray yourself in this meeting. So effectively what the metaverse will do is it will show you all sitting here in as if you're here in person, in 3D form, in whichever form you choose. It could be in your actual self or in an avatar or an animal form or whatever you want, right? But the whole idea of the metaverse is to give you a kind of real experience which is more real than reality. We are talking about law here and about crime. So what exactly can be a crime over here? Imagine a situation where if you are sitting at an office meeting and someone decides to misbehave. There is an incident of molestation. You have others witnessing it, you have a physical experience of the molestation, right? And you have laws to combat it. Imagine the same thing in the digital world. The metaverse is still an evolving technology. We have a lot of users already on metaverse, predominantly for gaming, but it is even being adapted for office meetings, etc. In fact, 2 weeks back, I got my first metaverse invite for a party, a metaverse party. So it's come to that level. So do not believe this is in the US, it's here in India and it's here to stay, right? And imagine in this kind of a situation, and one of the most recent cases is of a 43-year-old mother who decides to use the metaverse for the first time and chooses to resort to gaming. And she is subjected to sexual harassment. And this is not just of the metaverse, this is not because you're present in 3D form physically. This has happened earlier also. In fact, in my first book, which Seshu sir again was kind enough to have the first session on technology laws decoded, I have addressed this one particular case. It's called a rape in cyberspace. John Dibbles writes about it, and he talks about, and this is how it was, there is a villa in which you have different rooms and everything is virtual. You can go, you can sign in, you can go into each of these rooms, and it's like having a fireplace conversation with 10 or 12 people who are similar minded. And in that case, one of the miscreants, one of the users turned rogue and he hacked into the system, took charge of the avatars, that is your digital persona, and then started using his control to make the avatars have sexual acts with each other and with him, his avatar also. So the whole construct that was built through that case study was, and it happened, it's not just an anecdote. The whole issue that arose was, how will law deal with a situation like this? And in fact, I've addressed that in the first book. In the second book, my whole focus is to bring out various kinds of crimes and to explain how you don't have to wait for special laws to find your remedies. You can find the remedies in existing law whilst we await special provisions or special laws. That's the whole construct of my book, and today's topic is also going to be addressed in the same way. So starting with the Dibble situation, a rape cannot be dealt with through existing laws because the existing law under IPC 376 mandates a physical abuse and in a very specific manner, and therefore a virtual rape, despite the fact that every victim who has undergone this says we felt as violated as if this act had been committed physically on us. But ultimately it is still dealt with as if it's a psychological crime. And currently when you apply the tag rape, you would not have provisions that will protect you. But fear not, we don't just stop there, right? I started off with the first instance of the metaverse case and sexual harassment. If you look at the sexual harassment laws and you apply it to a situation like this, and often I get this question, particularly from corporates, when we want to talk about sexual harassment in the workplace. And this, of course, increased, the queries increased during COVID situation. So if someone were to make a sexual overture during a virtual meeting, will it still amount to sexual harassment? If in one of my earliest cases was the query which said, we are having a meeting, nobody is saying anything wrong, but one of these persons had his computer open on the background and it had pornographic content on it. So we felt very uncomfortable in the whole meeting, but he said nothing. Can we still take internal action for sexual harassment? So you have a lot of evolving situations because of the digital domain. And I can tell you, when you come down to these kind of specific lesser offences but with very high impact, you at least have some remedies. You can still take resort to 509 for outraging the modesty of a woman. You can still resort to sexual harassment if it is something that is applicable. So I'll give another example. In one of the earliest cases in terms of morphing, a young girl's face was taken from her social media account and morphed into nude for imagery. And this was shared on WhatsApp groups. The difficulty when it is shared on WhatsApp groups as opposed to online is, and there are many cases of online sharing of morphed pictures also, but when the difficulty when it's WhatsApp is, it gets circulated within your immediate community. It's not something which strangers are watching. And then when the girl steps out itself, she is facing people asking her very tough questions about why would you post like that? Is that really you? And then in this instance, the parents were very supportive and the girl files the complaint also. And this is a case from down south. And if you look for it, you will find it as the Vinupriya case. But after this bold step, after the support that is given to her, everything, later on, the parents themselves start questioning her in the same way. We have this classic example of blaming the victim in these situations. So in this case also, and in other similar, I'm not talking about Vinupriya's case as the case where this question arose, but various cases I've handled. I'm just using Vinupriya's as the example instead of using cases I've handled as the example, because this is a reported case in public domain. In this particular case, the victim was blamed as if she has shared. Imagine a situation where the victim goes to the police and she is asked, is this really you? And she says no. And the next thing that's told to her is, oh, if it is not you, then how does it become an offence? Because nobody is violating your privacy. Under 66E, if your private parts are exposed, then it amounts to an offence. Voyeurism, similarly, if it is something that pertains to you and your privacy and private areas, right? So, given the kind of way laws have evolved for the physical domain, when we apply it to virtual domain and the way technology can be misused, chances are that you may not have the necessary provisions exactly the way it goes, but please dig faster. And for all you, I'm sure all the veterans know, and I'm sure the youngsters also know this, but by way of abundant caution, I'm just adding this small bit of interpretation of statutes. I have heard seasoned lawyers make a mistake on platforms saying that many cyber crimes cannot be prosecuted because you don't have provisions for it. And in one instance, a person gave this example of revenge porn. The reason I'm giving this instance now is it goes hand in hand with the morphing case I talked about, and to explain that a morphing of a person's photograph and displaying it as if it's nude imagery, etc., you do have provisions to prosecute. You just have to look either under IT Act or under IPC, sometimes both. But remember, there is a case law now from the Bombay High Court of Gagan Sharma, which clearly says that, and that's also Anwar versus Bashir for you, special overrules general. So for instance, you have 66D, which is cheating by impersonation. You also have provisions under IPC. So you don't apply both, Where the special is there, and I will be coming to cases of cryptocurrency and financial frauds, and therefore this is a segue to that. So you can use 66D. You don't have to go into IPC offences or 418, 420, etc. 420 may still be applicable, and that's the delineation you have to make. That it is only where it is apples to apples you need to apply the special law. When it is something different but related, there is no embargo in you applying general laws. So for morphed pictures also, it's a fabricated document. After the IT Act came into effect, amendments were made to IPC also. Often people miss those sections which were added in IPC. So 464 to 473 for forgery of making of a false record, etc. were all also amended. Therefore, look deeper, you will find your provisions. Again, Saathi and this book which is about Saathi, and I'll just pause at some point to explain about Saathi, but not immediately. It talks about this only. Find your remedies and file a complaint, because if you don't go with filing a complaint, then you're letting a miscreant loose, and don't think you're going to be the last victim. Today's where, maybe the count may be one victim for the criminal, tomorrow it will become 100. And I will explain how also as we move forward. I'll try to cover as much as possible in the time given. So the segue, and that's why I don't want to pause here for Saathi, is this. We talked about morphing, we talked about how this person said on stage that there is no provision for revenge porn. Revenge porn is a colloquialism. Why should you look for that as a heading in law? So the pointer I wanted to give to people out there is, a header is only indicative, that's not the law. The provision underlying the header is what decides what is an offence. So please read the provision. If the action set out there amounts to a crime, you have your remedy there consequently. So do not believe that emerging technologies and crimes committed using that do not have provisions to deal with them. Everybody talks about how cryptocurrencies are not illegal. They also speak about how the Supreme Court has affirmed it as legal. Neither of it happened. It is correct to say that there is no law which regulates cryptocurrencies or bans it or explicitly sets it out as illegal. Therefore, whatever action you take with respect to cryptocurrencies is still in effect, therefore not restricted. But Supreme Court did not make it legal. The RBI, Reserve Bank of India, did not ban cryptocurrencies. It merely issued circulars to banks and payment systems and said that you will not facilitate transactions pertaining to cryptocurrency. Those circulars were struck down. So even during the subsistence of the circulars, nobody stopped anyone from transacting in cryptocurrency. So Supreme Court neither legalized it, nor banned it, nor said ban it, nothing. It just said those circulars were disproportionate in the IAMAI case. Today, this is a situation that is also already very prevalent and expanding in very innovative ways. Cryptocurrency scams. Forget about the legality or otherwise of cryptocurrency. But imagine people launching Ponzi schemes. They did it for paper money, for property, for plantations, right? You buy one tree in a plantation and then you will get XYZ, etc. Imagine that being moved to the digital world and emerging technologies. You have the same kind of scams emerging in cryptocurrencies also. One is called the rug pull scam, which is one recent instance which runs to several thousand crores, was unearthed in Karnataka. You have one down south in Kerala, if I'm not mistaken. And all of these have a classic modus. So money, the kind of exponential growth that cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoins and Ethereum and all are posed as the bait. So you know how much you can earn if you invest in cryptocurrencies. But all these established, as they call it, or legacy cryptocurrencies have now gone out of your reach because they are now worth several million dollars, etc. And therefore, why don't you now invest and help us to launch a new cryptocurrency? So you would be ahead of the crowd and then you can get the big valuation. So money is taken from people before anything exists. Cryptocurrency by itself is an ephemeral product. It doesn't exist in physical form. Even the virtual form that's all it has. It has a virtual form, and a decentralized cryptocurrency has all these problems, not just of volatility, but also of absence of accountability. All of these can be addressed only through regulation, and I have oft said this in my writing as well as in my talks, but we are not really going into that aspect. But imagine the second layer of it, where before you can figure out how to regulate cryptocurrencies, pyramid schemes are launched by saying that you invest this much, and then we will then, whenever we launch this X coin, we will give you, this many coins for your investment. And imagine, maybe you will get a valuation to begin with. And this classic case which I'm talking about down south, they launched it with the name of Morris coin. And it's very interesting with the name that is being used. I don't know whether the scamsters intended this connection, but this is the link I immediately saw. One of the earliest hacking cases, 1988 if I'm not mistaken, is of the dissemination of the Morris worm. So that was the name of the virus. The Morris worm was circulated so that people can take control of your computers. So from then to now, it seems like Morris is a favorite word for scamsters. So the Morris coin case is what I'm referring to here, where the police have registered a complaint for a Ponzi scheme. So this is twofold. One is that you put in your investment and they just take your money and run. It's a fly-by-night operator who runs away. The second part of it is that they encourage you to ask your friends and relatives to, in the typical Ponzi or pyramid scheme thing. And the problem that happens for all the investors is that the minute it results in a criminal case, you are confused already because you are investing for a cryptocurrency. You do not know whether it's legal or not, and anything to do with cryptocurrency, people are too scared to file a complaint. And this is what the scamsters rely on. The next level is for you to worry about the pyramid aspect of it. So you have encouraged more people to join, and you got nothing for it except this promise of more of that Morris coin probably. But you still encourage people to deposit. So technically for that, you can be held liable. And therefore there is a sense of fear. And it is this sense of fear which the scamsters use to get away. And with this, I'd like to segue to the next segment and then circle back to social engineering. Because let me talk about social engineering before I move to financial frauds. What exactly do I mean by social engineering? So the pyramid scheme scam which I talked about is referred to as a proximity scam, because you use your proximity to people, your relationship, your friendship, or some form of a connection to encourage somebody to part with their money. Financial frauds rely on the same kind of setup, where they will either build a relationship or use a relationship and posture as if they are part of that relationship, like your banking frauds, right? And romance scams. So you have so many evolving scams today that you can't even keep pace with the criminals, and you have to therefore be constantly vigilant when you're using online spaces. So when we talk about social engineering, from encouraging children to share pornographic content for child sexual abuse that will then be disseminated on online sites and WhatsApp groups meant for this specifically. Two financial scams, I mentioned one kind of it, the romance scam. Another is a job scam, right? Be really careful because everything is evolving. During COVID time, one friend's son fell for a passport scam where they said, we can still do it for you, but you have to pay this amount, etc. And then after making the payment, she reached out. So invariably when you see something that looks very official, or you get a mail as if it is official, income tax scams where they will say that you have not filed XYZ and therefore the income tax department will deduct X amount from your bank account unless you click on this link and complete KYC, click on this link and submit your reply, etc. The minute you click on that link, you have let the vampire into your house. And what is that vampire? That's the malware which has been circulated so that the miscreant can take control of your devices. It can be your mobile, it can be your iPad, it can be your computer, it doesn't matter what, right? But at every stage when you look at it, they will always try to relate it to an authority figure, which could be like the income tax department, the government, some government agency, etc., to relationships like your banking relationship manager, your KYC frauds, right? If you don't complete the KYC today, your bank account will be frozen. If you don't share this OTP right now, your digital wallet will be blocked, and therefore you have to then go to the bank, go to your service provider for having it reactivated. So I always tell people, we always fear that the biggest enemy of privacy is surveillance, right? I tell them no, it's convenience. We want convenience. So I'd set an alarm so that I'll know when to stop. So I will take another 10 minutes to close out. So we use convenience always. Oh, why should I sign in through a browser to complete my banking transaction? Provide me with the link so that I can do a click through. And then when the fraudulent link comes and you have clicked through, you have ended up with malware in your systems, right? Similarly, I always say that the biggest enemy for a safe user is convenience. Cybercrimes are mostly facilitated because of this convenience that we want. User experience, ease of business, ease of using a utility. So we can't eschew technology. We can't run away from using all this, and the COVID pandemic taught us that. All of us had to be ready and prepared. But use it wisely, and this is what I always tell people as the simplest input. What you will not do in person, why do you do it in the digital form? If somebody just walks up to you on the road and asks you what's your name, you will ask, why do you need to know, right? But online, you befriend anybody who sends you a friend request. You don't check. Merely because 20 or 50 of your friends are the so-and-so's friend doesn't make them a person known to you. Still check their credentials. Because 50 people may have fallen victim to somebody. Because once you add somebody as a friend, they become privy to everything that's happening in your life. So be cautious. This is how romance scams happen. First, most people, Tinder, don't assume that is only used by millennials. You have, and there are a lot of cases which I have relied on in the book, of elderly who have now become single and who are just looking for companionship. And then they look for companionship. They may go on either something similar to Tinder or online social media platforms with special groups, etc. And social engineering is all about how I build this relationship with you. Unfortunately, there are so many cases, and again, I've dealt with these also in the book, of how adults pretend to be youngsters and then socially engineer kids to become friends. Because the kids only see either the photograph that is on the social media platform or the way they interact or whatever is told to them. Predominantly, we just, everyone seems to think what is there on the digital medium is true. Why would you assume that? Today we question everything. We need to question this also, our conduct and how we act, and stay safe, because you can't avoid the technology, you can't avoid social media, but you can still remain careful in that, right? So whenever you befriend somebody, be careful. If someone asks you for photographs or videos, and I'm not just saying this for all of you, we are here in multiple roles as practitioners, and therefore we are in a way the mentors and the protectors for the victims and various people who come to us for advice. We are also users of technology, and we are also adults in our family. So your parents, brothers, sisters, children of elderly. So you are, and this is that is why I named this my foundation as Cyber Saathi, because everybody when they are in trouble always reaches out to a friend. They don't reach out to authority figures. They definitely don't come to lawyers first, and they're not going to go to parents immediately. And when it comes to technology, millennials automatically assume that us digital immigrants, as Prensky calls us, do not know technology. And if they hear me talk here, they may think, okay, she's just the exception, not the rule, right? But when you try to tell them, because what we are telling them are life stories, life experiences, but they don't look at it that way. But they will definitely listen to a peer. So that's why I called it Cyber Saathi, so that you can be a cyber friend. And in that context, I would like to close out with just these inputs. One, remember there are remedies in law. You can find your remedies in the IT Act, and very quickly, today I wanted it to be about storytelling, so I've not really shared each and every section, but I will do a quick run through now. And I can tell you, predominantly, morphing, what we talked about, not only would it have the fabricated document aspect, you can also rely on 67 and 67A IT Act. These deal with obscene content and sexually explicit content. The most important addition in 2008 amendments into the IT Act was of 67B, which deals with child sexual abuse content. Even inducing a child, between 67B and the POCSO provisions, even inducing a child to share sexually explicit content can be held liable, under these. So you have, again, more additions. 66A was unfortunately struck down because of abuse. I am not surprised, because as recently as last week or 2 weeks back, we saw the continued abuse of the existing provisions for political gain. That is going to continue, but 66A got struck down because of its abuse. But before it struck down, apart from the misuse, it was actually used for tens of thousands of cases of cyberbullying and cyber stalking. The cyber stalking law came in thereafter in 2013. So today you do have cyber stalking as an offence under IPC. All the additional provisions that came in thanks to the Verma Committee report substantially also help you. Under 354 ABCD, etc., you will find that those will come in very handy for digital crimes also. Financial crimes I have not been able to touch upon extensively except for the social engineering aspect. But remember, you don't just have to rush to police or courts for your remedies. You have two very effective remedies in law now. The first is the banks. You have an RBI circular which sets out there is a zero liability for the victims if you complain within 0 to 3 days, and you have a limited liability provision, right? Including where you may have inadvertently shared the OTP through phishing, etc. Banks will tell you about what not to do, but they never tell you about what your remedies are. So here is the Cyber Saathi telling you what your remedies are, right? You can ask the banks to reimburse you these amounts which you have lost to a financial fraud. You are all aware of the various methodologies used by criminals on that. If you're not, we'll need another session to go through those. But in the meantime, here are your remedies. And if the bank fails to give you that money, you can file a complaint before the RBI Ombudsman. The cheapest and possibly hopefully the fastest remedy. If not, you can file your complaint, and here as practitioners also, here is your input for your for all financial frauds as well as anything that falls within the IT Act, particularly from 43 onwards. And 43 is a very important provision because within 43 you have 6 subsections which deal with hacking, virus, denial of service attacks, data theft, etc. Right? For all of these, and also violation of 43A data protection laws, etc., where your data is breached, you can file a complaint before the adjudicating officer. Now, who's the adjudicating officer? The government was supposed to set up a separate tribunal for that, which they did not do. And thereafter, they appointed the Secretary's Ministry of IT as the adjudicating officer. Earlier it was a very inexpensive process. You did not have any court fees, etc. However, now you have to pay court fees. But nevertheless, it is much faster because it's almost like summary proceedings. So you can avail of that remedy also. Again, something which unfortunately is very, very used in very limited manner in India. And we've had this provision from 2000 and yet it's not been used. So please encourage others, and you all also please use this. After this comes your next level in terms of, again, before the pre-level, before you come to courts, please read the Intermediary Guidelines of 2021. A substantial number of the rules under it emanated from this case of Prajwala versus Union of India. I mean, the citation is Prajwala letter dated 18/2/2015, violent videos and recommendations. I've said this so often, I actually know the citation by heart. But it's a very, very important case because it was a consensus mechanism. It was not adversarial. So the Supreme Court appointed a committee. I'm amicus in the matter and part of the committee. And the committee submitted consensus proposals. Those were made an order of court in October 2017. And now it has become part of the law through Intermediary Guidelines 2021. One of the most important additions under that, and this applies to all social media platforms. Why I'm saying this is, under the Intermediary Guidelines, there is a delineation between platforms, intermediaries, which will include even e-commerce, etc., and significant social media intermediaries. So, which is of 50 lakh and more users. Therefore, why I'm delineating it is that you don't have to assume that it is only for the big tech that you have to apply this, it's applicable to all. And what is the remedy? That if you submit, if you have morphed pictures also, or your nude, whatever kind of pictures which harms you, or content which is harmful and which is a violation of any of the provisions of the IT Act, you can file a complaint with every platform must have a grievance officer. You can file your complaint before the grievance officer, and the grievance officer has to address it within 24 hours. 24 hours. If it is content like nude imagery, etc., or even morphed pictures, for all others they have 15 days to revert. So you have so many remedies before you have to run to court or to the police. And of course, when you run to police and court also, again, you have innumerable provisions. So now I'm going to pause here and say, read my book, and I hope I will have the opportunity to present a copy to Seshu sir after it's released. And I hope you all enjoy it, because this is my first foray into fiction also. So I've written first a fictional story and then use that to explain the law, because it's much easier to explain it whenever you tell it as a story. And I've also covered, and again, one more last word of caution for all the youngsters. Social media influencers. So not just Metaverse and cryptocurrency and all, I've also covered social media influencer scams, scams on social media influencers, scams by social media influencers, and finally scams using social media influencers. So be careful. It's often, even WhatsApp messages, and thanks to all this continuous barrage of telling them repeatedly, now I don't even have to say anything in the various groups I am in. Someone else says it. Check before you forward, because everything on the digital platforms we assume and we just forward. So please don't assume that anything on the net is true. One of the earliest New York cartoons was of a dog sitting in front of a computer, saying on the internet you could be a dog, for all anybody knows. And you don't know who's posting what, who's saying what, and how true it is. So be it in terms of fake news or hate speech, even these kind of messages which I kept seeing a lot of during the COVID time, telling you not to forward messages because you can be prosecuted, not to do XYZ, that's the chilling effect aspect. So both ways, it's not just about saying be cautious, but also don't be so cautious that you'll start believing anything and everything, right? So exercise caution, stay safe, and enjoy the benefits that technology brings to you. Thank you once again, Seshu sir, for having me here, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Nappinai ji. Excellent way you expressed. 11th hour request, believe it or not, late night 10 o'clock I requested, and other speakers supposed to speak, but wonderful. I know your potentiality.
Thank you,
if
sir.
you feel satisfied, we can continue after vacation part 2, subject to your approval.
Please, that
So
would
that
be
she
very-
applied for a senior designation also. If she get in the next video, she may be senior advocate Supreme Court.
Just
Thank you.
So now we have, in fact, I requested Mr. Justice Ellen Rao, but some guests for lunch they are at home, so he unable to come. Otherwise, he promised at least for 1 minute I will join. But at the same time, 4:10 we have auditorium farewell function. He promised in July definitely he will address our Friday group. So that's one. Otherwise, I badly tried. In fact, I purchased bouquets also. No problem. That is not an issue. If suddenly comes something. If any questions, 1 or 2, not more. Please, you can. I mean, any questions? I mean, you can remove that.
Cryptocurrency actually. What is cryptocurrency?
Oh, that will take a long.
No, it is already video is available on cryptocurrency in our Friday group channel.
Yeah.
You can
See,
on cryptocurrency.
explaining cryptocurrency needs a separate session in itself.
Not necessary.
Oh.
That's straight will come.
Oh, straight. Okay. I will definitely try and explain it at some future date, but just take my word on it in terms of understanding that cryptocurrency is not a product. It is not like, many people have asked me, that coin with the B in it, is that what is cryptocurrency? It has no physical form. It's just software. It is open source software and cryptography which has been combined to ensure that it has a secure way of transferring without the need of a central authority. So blockchain is the technology that enables cryptocurrency, but blockchain by itself is separate from it. But I will explain it offline. We'll take it offline on that. But believe me that it is just a virtual.
Because it is not share, it is not physical form.
It has no physical form, so please be very cautious when you're dealing with that. Remember that there is no accountability today, and apart from the fact of volatility and no certainty, and most importantly, no underlying value to it. So there are also a lot of my sessions on blockchain and cryptocurrency which you can look up on that. And sir has actually had a session specifically on
It's
that.
available on purely on cryptocurrency in one of the videos. You'll take your autograph next any
Sir.
message.
Yes. May I
Yeah,
borrow a pen, please? And I'll write the message also here. Backside.
This only
Okay.
just
One more question if anybody has.
one more question. You want
Sir,
Rahul?
may I
Rahul
write it
will-
here or
yeah,
here?
No, here.
Yeah.
This side.
This side?
No, I just want to know what is mining actually. But we have heard
Oh,
many
okay. That
times
I can answer
cryptocurrency
very
mining.
quickly.
Yeah, what is
Yes.
it actually?
So there was one of the earliest cryptocurrency scams was on this mining aspect.
Absolutely, yeah.
And most people entered into it without understanding what was mining itself. Mining is actually a very simple process. Now, I told you all cryptocurrency works in a decentralized manner. So now I decide to share, I will not, okay? I don't have any cryptocurrency also. But if I decide, if I had hypothetically, I share 0.1. Nowadays cryptocurrency is very expensive.
Yeah.
So I'm not sharing one Bitcoin with you,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
0.1
absolutely.
element of the
Element
thing
of it.
with you. Now there is no bank, RBI, nothing is there to say, I have indeed transferred something of value to you.
Absolutely.
Who decides that? Now someone has to validate this transaction. You could have a contract which says, I hereby transfer it to you. By the way, that's what the Ethereum platform did. It brought in what was called as a smart contract. So through coding, contracts were reduced to that one line to say, I hereby transfer this to you, in a way. So there is a contract also, once it is a smart contract enabled blockchain. Apart from that, you have blockchain has multiple, that's called the decentralized blockchain, which will have multiple nodes. So everybody in this room, let's say 50 or 100 people in the room, all of them are part of the same blockchain and they want to be miners. Now what is it that they're expected to do? They use computing to verify whether this transaction has actually taken place. And the first person who confirms this transaction to be valid and whose validation is accepted is paid a small portion of that cryptocurrency which is used for that blockchain, or the incentive form, whichever it may be. It could be fiat currency also, which is paid to that person. So that person who validates is the miner.
Okay.
That's what mining is all about. It is not like physical mining. It is not like you can go and do something and get some money. It is this validation process, which is, and the earning you get out of it, therefore it's called as mining. And that miner's validation is how it works in a decentralized manner. So that some third party who does not know you at all is actually confirming that this transfer from A to B is actually valid.
That is a reward in a reward.
In a
you
way,
get.
it's a reward, and that is why you will find a lot of writings also about how cryptocurrency can also be billed for income tax, because you're earning, right? It's not just capital gains from an investment. And this is one of the ways you can earn cryptocurrency.
Yeah, Abhilasha, she want to ask some question, please.
So this verification, will it get saved on each blockchain?
Yes, that is why it is called the blockchain, because every block added, the transaction that is added, it's called a block. And therefore, the advantage, and that's the beauty about blockchain, and I'm one of the strong advocates for blockchain, particularly for legal processes. And I say that, you know, our discovery processes can actually be made much easier if we had blockchain, etc. Because what blockchain gives you is not just the validation as you move forward. You can go trace it backward to what we call the genesis block, or the very first block. So you can trace and validate backwards and forwards. And that's the advantage of blockchain technology.
Very long while.
Yes, and one word of caution here. Whilst I advocate blockchain as a sound technology for various things, often we get carried away and also try to overexpand. So many people have talked about it as blockchain is a solution searching for a problem. So it should not become like that, for the simple reason that all this computing for you to affirm takes up a lot of energy. So only now, after a lot of people who care have raised their voice, and I was one of the earliest to raise concerns on this, is the environmental aspect of blockchain. So we have to understand that computing takes a lot of toll on our environment. So we have to be careful in terms of adaptation of technology and use it wisely. Make sure that it is applied for the right reasons and not just generally.
Yes, sir. And when is it taxable? And if it is taxable, then how can it be associated?
What is taxable or not?
Whatever the cryptocurrencies or whatever the rewards that these.
You know that the recent
30%.
finance bill has brought in the taxation, right? Even earlier, and you can read my article on this, it came exactly a day after the thing in Hindustan Times. I've talked about how merely because a product is taxed does not make it legitimate. It just means you have earned something, you have to pay money for it. You have to pay your taxes for it. That doesn't give any certificate of legitimacy to a service or goods or a product. Okay, I'm assuming that's your question. So anything more, we'll take it offline, given the positive of that. I'll just raise this. Oh, okay.
Next will be the 150th Friday group meeting, and 7 years we are going to complete in the July 10th, 2015. So let's see how we celebrate. July 10th, it's a Sunday, after first week of reopening, the third week maybe, mostly. But that could be 150th Friday group meeting, I would say. If anyone wants to, their names kindly indicate here, so we can add in Friday group, in a WhatsApp group. Just underline, I can. So today is the last working day for Friday group also. We'll see after that. What is it? Can you read yourself, madam?
Oh, because my handwriting. Thank you, Seshu sir, for this wonderful opportunity to be part of the Friday group family once again. And as always, it's an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you very much.